Here is the full story, written in simple, natural English, as one continuous piece without headings. Elira had worked in Castle Ashcroft for 6 years, and in that time she had seen strange things. She had seen guards cry after losing a bet. She had seen the head cook throw a whole pot of soup because a knight complained about salt. She had seen nobles faint at the smell of lavender. But nothing prepared her for what she found in the laundry room on a cold morning in early spring. She had come in before sunrise, the way she always did. The castle was quiet at that hour. Just her, a basket of linens, and the smell of soap and wet stone. She pushed the door open with her hip, because her arms were full, and she stepped inside without looking up. Then she looked up. There was a wolf on the floor. Not a small one. Not a farm dog pretending to be fierce. This was a wolf the size of a small horse, gray and silver, curled in the corner near the drying racks like it belonged there. Elira did not scream. She was proud of that later, when she told the story to no one, because there was no one she could tell. Instead, she froze. The basket slipped from her arms and hit the floor, and a few pillowcases spilled out, and she just stood there, staring, her mind doing that thing minds do when they refuse to accept what the eyes are reporting. She started counting the pillowcases in her head. 1, 2, 3. It was a stupid thing to do. It was the only thing her brain would let her do. The wolf did not move. Its sides rose and fell, slow and steady, the way something breathes when it is deeply asleep, not the way something breathes when it is about to attack. That should have made her feel better. It did not. She took a step back toward the door. Her hand found the frame. She told herself very calmly that this was fine, that wolves did not normally nap in laundry rooms, and that whatever explanation existed for this was probably worse than the wolf itself. That was when she noticed the wolf was not alone. There was something small tucked against its stomach, hidden mostly by the thick fur. At first she thought it was a bundle of cloth, maybe something that had fallen from a shelf. But then it moved. A small hand came out from the fur and pressed against the wolf's chest, fingers curling into the gray coat like someone gripping a blanket in their sleep. It was a child. Elira's breath caught somewhere between her throat and her chest, and stayed there. She knew that hand. She knew the small scar on the wrist, shaped like a comma, from a fall 2 winters back near the stable. She had bandaged that exact wrist herself, back when the little girl used to run through the kitchen begging for bread crusts. The girl who was supposed to be dead. Elira's knees made the decision before her mind did. She sat down right there on the cold stone floor, the basket forgotten, the pillowcases forgotten, because her legs simply refused to hold her up any longer. The girl's name was Wren, or it had been Wren 3 winters ago, before the fever came through the lower village, and took her mother and, according to the official record read aloud in the courtyard by a tired steward, took Wren too. There had been a small funeral. A stone had been placed. People had cried, including Elira, who used to sneak the girl extra honey cakes when the head cook wasn't looking. And now here she was, not dead, asleep against the side of a giant wolf in a laundry room, breathing easy, safe, alive. Elira did not understand any of it, but her body understood something, because tears were already sliding down her face before her mind caught up to why. The wolf's ear twitched, then its eyes opened. They were not wolf eyes, not really. They held something too aware, too tired, too human to belong to an animal. The wolf lifted its head slightly, careful not to disturb the girl still curled against it, and looked directly at Elira, with an expression she had never expected to see on anything with fur and fangs. It looked embarrassed. Then, in the space of a few seconds, the wolf was not a wolf anymore. The change did not happen the way stories describe it, smooth and graceful like poetry. It happened the way real things happen, awkward and a little painful to watch, bones shifting under skin with small cracking sounds, fur pulling back into skin, the shape of the body folding down into something smaller and upright. When it was done, King Draven Ashcroft was sitting on the laundry room floor, human again, dark hair messy, an old cloak thrown loosely over his shoulders that must have been kept nearby for exactly this purpose. He did not look like a king in that moment. He looked like a man who had spent the night on a stone floor because someone small needed him to. Elira should have bowed. She should have apologized for intruding, backed out of the room, and pretended she had seen nothing. That was the correct thing to do when a maid stumbled upon her king in a private and clearly secret moment. She did not move. Draven's eyes went first to the girl, checking without needing to check that she was still breathing, still sleeping, still safe. Only after that did he look back at Elira, and there was no anger in his face, just tiredness, and something else underneath it that looked almost like relief, like a secret being set down after being carried too long. "She sleeps easier when I'm like this," he said quietly. His voice was rough from disuse, from a night spent as something without a human throat. Bigger heartbeat, steadier. He did not explain further. He did not offer an apology, or a threat, or a bribe for her silence. He simply said it, plain and quiet, the way a person says something true when they are too tired to dress it up. Elira looked at the girl again. Ren's small chest rose and fell. Her thumb had found its way near her mouth, an old habit Elira remembered from years ago, back when she was small enough to be carried on someone's hip through the kitchen. "Everyone thinks she's gone," Elira said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "Everyone was meant to," Draven said. He did not say why. He did not explain the fever, or the funeral, or the stone in the yard with a name carved into it that apparently marked an empty grave. Elira understood, in the way people sometimes understand things without being told, that there were people in this world who wanted a small girl to be dead, and that a king willing to sleep on a laundry room floor in the shape of a wolf was a king protecting her from exactly those people. She did not ask who. She did not ask why now, or why here, or why a laundry room of all places. Instead, she picked up one of the pillowcases from the floor, the ones that had fallen from her basket, and began folding it. It did not need folding. It had already been folded once. She folded it anyway because her hands needed something to do, and folding cloth was the only task her body trusted itself with in that moment. "I didn't see a girl," she said, eyes on the linen in her hands. "I saw a very large dog who needs to learn to use a proper bed." Something moved across Draven's face. It was not quite a smile. It looked more like a muscle, remembering an old shape it had not used in a long time, testing whether it still worked. "She won't sleep in a bed," he admitted. "Not since the fever. She wakes up screaming if she's alone in a room. The only thing that keeps her calm is a heartbeat bigger than her fear." Elira looked at him properly then, not as a king, not as the imposing figure whose portrait hung in 3 different halls of the castle, but as a man clearly running on no sleep, doing something no book of royal duties would have prepared him for. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "Since the funeral," he said. 3 years. 3 years of secret nights. 3 years of pretending, during the day, to be the cold and distant alpha king the court expected, while at night becoming something soft enough for a grieving child to hold on to. Elira tried to imagine the exhaustion of living 2 lives stacked on top of each other like that, and found she could not fully picture it, though something in her chest ached trying. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "You could have made me forget I ever came in here." "There are ways." "There are," he agreed. "I'm choosing not to." "Why?" He looked down at Ren, brushing a strand of hair away from her face with a gentleness that did not match anything Elira had heard whispered about him in the kitchens, where the staff called him unreadable, harsh, a king who ruled through silence rather than warmth. "Because I'm tired of doing this alone," he said, "and because you didn't scream. It was such a small thing to be trusted for, not screaming, but Elira understood, in the quiet of that early morning laundry room, that trust was often built from exactly these kinds of small things. Not screaming when something impossible sits in front of you, choosing to fold a pillowcase instead of running for the guards. She sat with him a while longer, neither of them speaking, the girl sleeping soundly between them like something the 2 adults had silently agreed to guard together. Outside, the sky began to lighten, the way it does before the rest of the castle wakes and the day's noise begins. Eventually, Elira stood. She had work to do, laundry to finish, a normal day to pretend to have. "I should start a fire," she said, glancing at the cold grate in the corner of the room. It's cold in here for a child. You don't have to, Draven said. I know, she said. I'm doing it anyway. She knelt by the grate and got the fire going, small flames catching on old kindling until warmth began to spread into the room. She did not look back to see if the king was watching her do it. She already knew he was. Some things do not need to be said twice to be understood. From that morning, something shifted between them, quiet and unspoken, the way real trust often is. Elira did not tell anyone what she saw. Not the other maids, not the cook who liked gossip more than she liked bread, not even the guard who sometimes walked her home after late shifts and asked, half joking, if she'd seen any castle ghosts lately. She kept the secret the way she kept the fire that morning. Carefully, without fuss, because someone needed it kept. Over the following weeks, Elira found herself assigned, quietly and without much explanation, to duties near the private wing of the castle where the king's chambers were. She understood this was not an accident. She understood, too, that it was Draven's way of keeping her close, without having to explain why, a king's version of trusting someone without saying the word trust out loud. She began to notice things about Wren she had not noticed before, back when the girl was simply a small kitchen shadow who begged for honey cakes. Wren did not speak much, and when she did, her words came out careful, like she was checking each one before letting it leave her mouth. She startled at loud sounds. She flinched, just slightly, whenever a door closed too hard, and she never, not once, asked about her mother. Elira learned, slowly, in pieces dropped here and there by servants who did not know the full truth but knew fragments of it, that the fever that swept the lower village 3 years ago had not been ordinary sickness. There had been talk, hushed and quickly silenced, of poison, of a rival pack testing loyalty by targeting the families closest to the throne, of a queen, Wren's mother, who had uncovered something dangerous before she died, something dangerous enough that her daughter needed to disappear from the world entirely to survive. Draven never confirmed any of this to Elira directly, but one evening, weeks after that first laundry room morning, she found him sitting on the floor outside the girl's hidden room, back against the wall, staring at nothing. She asked about her mother today, he said, without looking up when Elira approached with a tray of tea she had not been asked to bring, but brought anyway. First time in 3 years. Elira set the tray down carefully. What did you tell her? The truth, he said, as much of it as a 6-year-old can hold without breaking. He did not elaborate. Elira did not ask him to. She simply sat down beside him on the floor, not as a maid sitting beside her king, but as one tired person sitting beside another, and let the silence stretch comfortably between them. You could hire a proper nursemaid, she said eventually. Someone trained for this. Someone who isn't scrubbing floors during the day. I could, he agreed, but she trusts you, and trust for her is rarer than gold right now. Elira thought about that. About how trust, once broken by something as large as watching your whole world get taken from you before you turned 6, becomes something you ration out carefully, like a candle you're not sure will get replaced. All right, she said. Then I suppose I'm in this now. You were in this the moment you didn't scream, Draven said. Life did not become simple after that. If anything, it became more complicated, layered with secrets that had to be protected during the day and only loosened at night, in that same laundry room that had somehow become, without anyone deciding it formally, a kind of safe meeting point for the 3 of them. Wren began to associate the room with warmth, with the smell of clean linen, with the 2 adults who did not treat her like something fragile that might shatter if handled wrong. She began to talk more. Small things first. Questions about the wolf shape, about whether Elira had ever wanted to be an animal, about whether the moon ever got tired of being stared at by wolves every single night. Elira answered each question honestly, even the ones she didn't have good answers for, because she had learned that children, especially ones who had survived what Wren survived, could smell a lie the way dogs smell fear. Word did eventually spread, as secrets in castles tend to do no matter how carefully guarded. Not the full truth, not exactly, but rumors. Whispers among the staff about strange sounds from the private wing at night, about a maid who had somehow earned the trust of a king, known for trusting almost no one, about shadows moving where shadows shouldn't be. Elira ignored most of it. She had learned, over 6 years of castle life, that rumors were like laundry stains. Left alone, most of them faded on their own. Only the ones you scrubbed at too hard tended to set in permanently. The real danger came not from rumors but from a visit. A delegation arrived from the neighboring Pack territory late that summer, official business dressed up in formal robes and polite smiles that did not reach anyone's eyes. Among them was a woman named Lady Corvina, whose presence made every guard in the castle stand a little straighter, and every servant find urgent reasons to be somewhere else. Elira did not know the full history there. She only knew, from the tension that settled over the castle the moment Corvina's carriage rolled through the gates, that this was connected somehow to what had happened 3 years ago, to the fever, to the reason a small girl had needed to become a ghost to stay alive. Draven's public face returned in full during that visit. The cold king, the unreadable Alpha. Elira watched him greet Lady Corvina in the great hall, with a courtesy so perfectly measured it felt like watching a man perform a role he had grown sick of playing, and she understood, without being told, that every ounce of warmth she had seen in the laundry room was being locked away for the duration of this visit, out of necessity rather than choice. That night, Wren did not sleep. Elira found her curled in the corner of the hidden room, knees to her chest, refusing the comfort of even the wolf shape, because the wolf shape meant Draven leaving the Great Hall, and leaving the Great Hall while Corvina's people were still awake in the castle was too dangerous to risk. Elira sat with her instead. She did not have fur, or a bigger heartbeat, or any of the things that usually calmed the girl. She had only her own steady breathing and a story about a very foolish goat she had once chased around the castle courtyard for 2 hours, which she told slowly, with exaggerated details, until Wren's shoulders finally began to loosen. "Will she find me?" Wren asked, when the story ended, her voice small in the dark. Elira did not lie to her. She had learned by then that lying to this particular child did more harm than the truth ever could. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I know a lot of people are working very hard to make sure she doesn't." "Is the king one of them?" "He's the main one," Elira said. Wren was quiet for a while after that. Then she said something that stayed with Elira for a long time afterward. "He smells like safe," she said. "Even when he's not a wolf." Elira did not have a response for that. She simply pulled the girl a little closer and let her fall asleep against her side instead, a smaller kind of steady heartbeat than the one Wren was used to, but a heartbeat all the same. The delegation stayed for 11 days. Every one of those days, Draven wore his cold king's face in public, and in the few private hours he could steal, came to check on Wren with an exhaustion Elira had not seen on him before, not even during the earliest laundry room mornings. She began bringing him tea without being asked, the same way she had that first evening outside Wren's door, and he began accepting it without comment, which she understood by then was his own quiet way of saying thank you. On the 9th day, Lady Corvina asked, during a formal dinner, whether the rumors of a hidden child in the castle held any truth. Elira was not present for that dinner. She heard about it afterward, second-hand, from a nervous serving girl who had been pouring wine at the time and nearly dropped the pitcher when the question was asked. According to her, Draven had not so much as blinked. He had simply said, in a voice so flat it could have frozen the wine in the glasses, that grief made people invent ghosts, and that he had buried his queen and her daughter with his own hands 3 years ago and had no interest in reopening that wound for the entertainment of dinner guests. It was a lie built on the exact shape of a truth, close enough to hold up, cold enough that no one at that table dared push further. When Elira heard the story, she understood something about Draven she had not fully understood before, that the coldness the castle staff whispered about was not the absence of feeling. It was armor built specifically to protect something warm underneath it, something small and asleep in a hidden room, something worth every frozen word spoken in a dinner hall full of people who might use warmth as a weapon if they ever saw it. The delegation left on the 11th day. The castle exhaled as one collective breath, the the moment the last carriage rolled through the gates and out of sight. That night, for the first time in 11 days, Draven returned to the wolf shape, and Wren slept soundly with her hand curled in gray fur, and Elira sat nearby with a fire going in the small grate, and none of them spoke about how close the last 11 days had come to breaking something that had taken 3 years to build. Seasons changed. Wren grew, slowly, into something that resembled a normal child, though never fully, because normal was a thing that had been taken from her before she understood what she was losing. She still startled at loud noises. She still asked, every so often, quiet, careful questions about her mother that Draven answered as honestly as a father could to a child too young for the whole truth. But she also laughed more. She learned to bake, badly, alongside Elira in the kitchen during the rare hours the head cook was away. She learned the names of every horse in the stable and insisted on visiting each one individually, as though skipping a horse might hurt its feelings. She grew taller and steadier and less afraid of rooms without a heartbeat bigger than her own in them. Elira never officially became anything more than a maid in the eyes of the castle records, but within the walls of that hidden room, within the quiet hours nobody else witnessed, she became something else entirely. Not quite family by blood, but family by the kind of choice that sometimes matters more than blood ever could. Draven never formally explained, to her or to anyone, why he had chosen to trust a laundry maid with the biggest secret of his kingdom. But one evening, years after that first frozen morning among spilled pillowcases, as they sat together watching Wren fall asleep without needing fur or fear to do it, he said something that answered the question anyway. "You didn't scream," he said again, the same words from that very first day, "and you never once asked for anything in return for staying quiet." Elira thought about that, about all the things she could have asked for over the years. Gold, a title, a life outside the castle walls, free of scrubbing floors and folding linens that never stayed folded. "I didn't need anything," she said. "I just needed her to be safe, and you to stop carrying it alone." Draven looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable and warm moving behind his tired eyes. "You gave me that," he said quietly. "More than you know." Outside the small window, the moon hung full and bright over the castle, the same moon Wren used to ask questions about, wondering if it ever got tired of being watched by wolves every night. Inside, the fire crackled low in the grate, warming a room that had once been nothing more than a place for washing linens, and had become, over years of quiet mornings and secret nights, something closer to a home. And somewhere in that warmth, a king who wore coldness like armor during the day, and a maid who had never once screamed at the sight of an impossible thing, and a small girl who had survived what should have ended her, sat together in the kind of peace none of them had expected to find in a laundry room. It was not a grand ending, the kind sung about in bards' tales or carved into castle histories. It was quieter than that, smaller, but it was real, and it was theirs, and sometimes that turns out to be more than enough.